what we are doing at R3, we're all actually already in production. We already have a pipeline of projects and solutions that people are developing, or not just developing, actually running in production. So all these different companies had basically joined R3 or paid a membership to R3. But when it came time for us to take a look at blockchain technology, and if we were going to do one from scratch, what kind of requirements do we need to do in order to fulfill that? I've certainly been at my share of conferences where the Bitcoin maximalists, or to some extent the Ethereum maximalists, will say, look, a blockchain is only a cryptocurrency, or it's only Bitcoin, and any other context is not applicable. But really, when you stop and think about it, and again, coming at it from my background in middleware and data, when all is said and done, the blockchain is just a shared database with some unique characteristics such as append-only operations. That's it. There's no reason to necessarily overthink that. So if I just take that concept, then the cryptocurrency is just an application that's running on top of that layer. And I can take the cryptocurrency off as an application and put on some other application like supply chain or trade finance or payment settlement or what have you. Now maybe I still use the currency or a token because it makes sense to do so in a business context, but I don't necessarily have to. The other two blockchains, which shall not be named, but are pretty much the other big blockchains in the space, did not pass. They basically crashed. And again, it's partially because of the engineering design of what they're trying to do versus the way Corda or even how digital assets are designed. All right, so what I really wanted to get to was the use cases in my remaining 11 minutes or so. So as it turns out, if you design a blockchain from the ground up, or DLT, from the ground up to the rigorous standards of a KYC, AML type of institution, financials, banks, so on and so forth, turns out other industries like that. They like that privacy aspect, they like the performance aspect, they like the reusability of the technology. So it's not that we're not perfect for every possible use case, of course not. There's still great use cases for public blockchains, for Hyperledger, and so on. But again, we were designed for some specific requirements that, as it turns out, are common to other industries. And as a result, Corda has actually only been released as 1.0 since the end of 2017. And we're already in production with about 20 different systems since that time. It's only a year and a half. And probably dozens, if not more, in the pipeline, ranging from the financial kinds of applications that you might imagine to a lot of industries, for example, we didn't really anticipate. So for example, my good friend Deepthi from Microsoft cited a couple trade finance applications. These are large consortiums, typically of banks, of shippers, of corporates, that are basically doing trade finance. In the case of Voltron, it's e-documents. In the case of Marco Polo, it's account opening and full account life cycle. We also have delivery of payments in Thailand, which Deepthi also mentioned, as well as a company called Finacle Connect with the solution. One of the more interesting projects that we're working on is central bank digital cash with the Bank of Thailand, which again, Deepthi mentioned that one. Maritime insurance with InsureWave, which he mentioned. But we also have a small startup company called Vessel that's doing basically insurance matching between small and medium businesses and maritime shippers. There's several large insurance consortiums that have chosen the standard on Corda. B3I, RiskBlock. B3I is for reinsurance. RiskBlock is more general purpose insurance platform. Another consortium in India and Italy. But that represents most of the insurance industry right there. Syndicated lending with Finastra. So somebody mentioned on the panel earlier about syndicated lending and how that seems like that would be a very powerful use case. Well, this is actually in production. Finastra is in production with LenderCom running on Corda. Digitized precious metals and trading on Tradewin. High-value liquid assets on HQLAX, oil gas royalties on Guild 1, Supply chain track and trace for healthcare clinical trials on HS blocks, and corporate KYC and consumer KYC, developed by some partners, Gemalto and Synachron. These are all either in production or near production. So these are systems that are actually live and running. A little further on the in production track, not quite as far along, these are more recent, but land registration in the United Kingdom by the government, the UK government, will all be on Corda. Digital platform lending, this is being developed as we speak in Thailand. This is a partner in Thailand. Food supply chain provenance with Ripe.io. This was announced just last week. Domestic interbank reconciliation with SIA. Again, this was a recent announcement. Supply chain management, tokenization of corporate currency is an interesting one that we're developing with some partners in Japan, but it solves a really clear pain point that very large corporations have, and that is the lack of visibility and liquidity and transparency into corporate cash, particularly for a large international corporation. So basically tokenizing that cash and then applying analytics to that tokenization in order to control it, exit out to different kinds of fiat currencies. The one that I somehow inexplicably left off here was the one that the gentleman from Swiss Stock Exchange mentioned. That is, the Swiss Digital Exchange is being built on Corda. So that entire digital asset ecosystem is being built on the Corda platform. We have some other partners that are building parts of that, such as corporate actions and standard settlement instructions. So we're really kind of building out that whole digital asset ecosystem, which kind of leads into my next point. So we've had some recent announcements that have garnered some interest. We created a payment and settlement application that's open source. Anybody can download it, anybody can use it or plug into it or what have you. And when we first did it, we did it for XRP, for the Ripple protocol standard. And that got a lot of people very excited that, oh my God, R3 and Ripple have settled their differences and are in bed together. No, not quite. It's just that it was very easy to do as a kind of as an MVP. But now we announced a partnership with Swift. So Swift GPI will plug into our payment settlement application, or actually vice versa. We'll plug into the GPI network. And again, the announcement about the Swiss Digital Exchange was a big news for us. What this indicated was a pivot, or not quite a pivot, but an addition to what we were working on and the way we were thinking about this space. So a year and a half ago, we would never touch coins or tokens, because that was the ICO world, that was ERC 2721. But nevertheless, people were out there raising capital, using ICOs and so forth. But when the ICO market kind of collapsed, it suddenly became safe to start talking about coins and tokens from an enterprise context. And I mentioned that, that corporate treasury, the international conglomerate, tokenized cash, those kinds of conversations actually start to introduce a completely different concept of coins and tokens that suddenly made it safe for us to look at this and say, there's more to this than just ICOs. So we get beyond raising capital and start to think about new markets, to talk about operational efficiency of those markets, and actually solve some problems that enterprises have using tokenized and digitized assets. So what we've started to do is, of course, you still have the Corda blockchain layer. People still build applications on that. We're starting to build out a library of middle-tier components that will make it easier, for example, for SDX, for SIX, to build out their digital exchange, or for people to build out post-trade settlements, corporate actions, things like that. So we've really started to look a lot more closely at what's going on in the digital asset space. We have a number of tokens and coins that we're building that are for private networks. They're not going to be going on public networks. They will be for folks that, for example, want to do whitelisted trading, want to create a digital marketplace, want to represent a particular kind of asset or asset class. But we also have some partners that are doing things like tokenizing ERC-2721 on Corda or Bitcoin on Corda, so that I can represent those transactions on a private Corda network, permission network, even though it's coming from a public network. So basically, there's a lot happening in this space that we're working on. I have about 2 minutes, so I wanted to quickly kind of draw this to a close, just in case there were any questions I could answer real quick.
Thank you. Yes, there are some questions.
I was afraid of that.
So the first, while many others are still at POC or